Frank Seravalli just dropped a bomb yesterday on Halford and Brough in the morning on Sportsnet 650, Vancouver Sports Talk Radio. I'm going to leave a link in the description to this Apple Podcasts episode of Halford and Brough. It's trade rumor time from yesterday, because this is the episode in question that has Frank Seravalli on as a guest. There's a lot of really interesting information from Frank as it pertains to some American Olympic gold medal winners. We have some apparent disgruntled feelings from folks like Connor Hellebuyck, and we have the latest on Steve Yzerman and the Dylan Larkin trade sweepstakes. It's all on Halford and Brough, so I'd highly recommend you go out there and listen to Frank Seravalli's hit himself. But let's start out with one of the more intriguing conversations at hand. What is the future of Connor Hellebuyck out of the Winnipeg Jets? 33-year-old goaltender, signed till the end of 2031, making $8.5 million a year. Former Hart winner, multi-time Vezina winner. Connor Hellebuyck is coming off of an .895 save percentage year where he had way more losses than wins in 57 games. Sure, he had a .956 save percentage in 5 games at the Olympics. He had a .118 goals against average at the Olympics. And he ended up getting himself, what was it called? A Medal of Freedom or whatever it is? I'm sorry, I am not American, so I actually don't know the ins and outs of what this means. Presidential Medal of Freedom to Team USA goaltender Connor Hellebuyck. And one of the really interesting parts about Hellebuyck's story, according to what Seravalli says on the program, is the fact that when Connor Hellebuyck returned to Winnipeg post-Olympics victory, the Winnipeg Jets supposedly did not honor Hellebuyck, nor his Presidential Medal of Freedom in any way. That's the update that Frank Seravalli provides, and he insinuates in a way that this might have caused some sort of ill will from the perspective of Connor Hellebuyck, that when combined with the losing and the negative outlook on the season, combined for a perfect storm where Hellebuyck is all of a sudden frustrated and all of a sudden potentially ready to move on. Now, don't take my word for it. I'd highly recommend you actually listen to the audio, but Seravalli does specifically mention how, because Winnipeg did not honor Connor Hellebuyck in that way, there are questions as to whether or not that would have negatively affected the way these American players return to their NHL teams in Canada and what their overall thought process of that is going to be looking forward. Brady Tkachuk, Austin Matthews, Quinn Hughes, Matthew Tkachuk, Connor Hellebuyck. There are a number of guys that have gone through this or that could be going through this soon. And it's all of a sudden another forefront conversation when you think about these American dudes and what their real wishes are. With that said, we also had other NHL insiders like Elliotte Friedman 3 days ago talking on 32 Thoughts about how there is a lot of noise around Connor Hellebuyck. We also had Darren Dreger on the Barn Burner podcast saying that Winnipeg is willing to consider moving Connor Hellebuyck. Dreger goes on to talk about what they would need in return for him, preferably a second-line center, and maybe you get a defenseman on top of that. He also specifies the Jets are looking for bigger, more physical defensemen that are hard to play against. They also need a fourth-line center, but you can get that easier through free agency. The reason teams are calling is because of how his end-of-year media availability went and how unhappy he was with the season as a whole. In fact, there were articles written about this from the Winnipeg Free Press. Here's a piece from Ken Wiebe and Mike McIntyre published yesterday as well. This article is a pretty interesting read. It dives into pretty much every piece of info that we've gotten so far. How Hellebuyck was really disappointed, it seemed, when he stepped in front of the reporters during his exit interviews in mid-April. How Kevin Cheveldayoff expressed no concern about what was said and actually praised the competitiveness of Hellebuyck. The expectation was that the Jets were aware of Hellebuyck's frustration and they would address some of those concerns this offseason with upgrades to the roster. However, now we've got other people talking about whether or not he could be asking out. Part of that is because of Dylan Larkin. Part of that is because of Quinn Hughes. You have Elliot Friedman. You have Darren Dreger going out there and saying these things. And then Seravalli is directly talking about how potentially this could be a conversation to follow too. Going back to the Seravalli hit, not only does he talk about Connor Hellebuyck, but he also talks about Dylan Larkin and gives this update that was posted by the Grindline podcast. According to Frank Seravalli on Halbro Sportsnet 650, Steve Yzerman knows he's sitting on the premium chip in Dylan Larkin at a premium position, and he is more than comfortable keeping him until he gets value, even if it goes into the season. Interestingly enough, Seravalli, he talks about how cooler heads may prevail in the Connor Hellebuyck situation if everybody's just able to calm down, be chill, wait it out, and let those emotions settle down. Then maybe things can be okay and Hellebuyck can return to Winnipeg, no questions asked. But then he says that Steve Yzerman is potentially the ultimate cooler head, because Dylan Larkin came up with a trade request and only gave Yzerman 3 teams to work with. Guess what? Dylan Larkin doesn't have to be traded. The Red Wings don't have to move him. The guy is signed till 2030, and he's making a decent amount of money too, $8.7 million. It's a fine contract for a fine player. If Steve Yzerman is unable to get the value he wants, from Frank Seravalli's report, it doesn't seem like Yzerman has any issues saying, okay, well, Dylan, you're signed with us. You are going to play with us unless you give us more opportunities to trade you, because we're not trading you for peanuts. You're worth more than that. You're signed on till 2030. It's not like you have just a few months to go before you could wait out and leave like Mitch Marner did last year with Toronto. There is a genuine amount of leverage that Steve Yzerman seems to have, and he knows it. He knows that centers are hard to come by, and he knows that Larkin is essentially the best center on the market if you exclude Robert Thomas. There is a certain tranquilo element to the way Steve Yzerman is approaching this situation, and as a result, he has all the power to go up to Larkin and say, dude, give us more teams. If you don't give us more teams, we're not trading you. We're just going to bring you back, and then you're going to have to play. You're going to be in training camp. You're going to be in practice. You're going to be on a team that you're the captain of, and all the players know that you asked out. It's going to be weird. Give us more teams or else. And that seems to be the way that Yzerman is attacking this Larkin situation. Certainly a really interesting update, and I would highly recommend you go out there and check it out yourself. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. How do you feel about the Dylan Larkin situation in Detroit, the Connor Hellebuyck situation in Winnipeg, whether or not a Presidential Medal of Freedom being acknowledged or going unacknowledged is enough fuel for a guy to request a trade? Do you think that's valid in a way? There are a number of things that you can point to when it comes to Hellebuyck potentially wanting out. So good at the Olympics, so meh in the regular season. Where do you go from here if you're the Winnipeg Jets and Connor Hellebuyck? And does this guy get traded to the Florida Panthers? That's the big question everybody wants to see get answered. Does Dylan Larkin go to the Florida Panthers? He wanted to go there. Does Florida just get everybody and then they go back to the finals in 2027 and then they beat Edmonton again? Who knows? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Links in the description to the Winnipeg Free Press article on Hellebuyck. It's a good read, as well as Frank Seravalli's audio on Halford and Brough. I hope you enjoyed this video. And bye.